during last night's Kennedy Center honors, Stephen Colbert targeted the president with a joke that was both incredibly funny and, if you're a member of the mainstream media, incredibly difficult to understand. Let's watch.
Listen to here, Stephen Colbert looking up at the presidential box at the president and the first lady and making a key, you might say, wrap-up 2014 midterm election year point.
The most powerful and influential person in the world, Michelle Obama. Madam First Lady, lovely to see you. Good evening. There she is, looking radiant, on camera, next to the president, which I assume means she has no future plans to run for office. Thank you for being here, ma'am. No, there are a lot of Democrats who don't have that courage.
That's pretty
funny. It was funny. It was actually, when you read it this morning, well, I didn't mean to suggest that you didn't read it as funny, but it was funnier.
My delivery might not have been as good as Stephen Colbert's.
Colbert-esque.
Yes, many people in the comments will agree with that.
So that was funny. The president, that's a totally legitimate laugh. He thought it was funny. You know,
Yeah, well, he laughed, and then he thought about it more. He's like, oh, yeah, that's really
funny.
good.
Because at the first part, when he's like the most powerful woman in the world, I think he just thought that was a compliment of Michelle Obama. At first, right? He didn't realize what Colbert was setting up. But yeah, so that's funny because Democrats, as we just talked about in the Mary Landrieu story, which is another clip you can watch here on the Turks, you know, everybody's afraid of the president. I don't think that's always wise. And again, like, you got your ass kicked anyway because, again, whether the president comes and campaigns with you and the fear that Democrats have is, oh, the optics of being next to They know. Yeah. They know you're a Democrat. They know you're friends with the president.
And the idea that, like, well, if they don't catch me in the same frame with the president, they're not going to insult me this election. Right. They're going to find something. Why not bring the president, the most powerful man, arguably, in the world, to your state and get the people in your state who are going to support you actually excited about it? Think that you matter. You have the ear of the president. That's worth something.
Yeah, I mean, whether you think the president has done a good job or not, there are still people who get excited about him. There are things you can run on. You can run on the Affordable Care Act. I mean, we all sit at this table, all think it should have been better, but you can run on it. You can try. And again, people know. And so running, as we said, we thought cost a lot of people. Running away from progressivism and using him as a symbol of progressivism only seems to be relevant in an election cycle because he has not behaved in any way as a progressive. But it doesn't matter because that was a joke. It was a little funny, but the CNN people, they couldn't follow.
John King did not take it well. Let's look at his interpretation.
Allison and Chris, you know, the president, at least taking the joke, at least publicly there, gave the smile, gave the nod. He got it.
No, he seemed to actually be laughing. Sometimes he gives the courtesy nod, but he seemed to like that one, actually.
The last election of his time is over, so I guess, you know, whether he doesn't like the results of 2014, but at least he can let it go.
Yeah.
Well, also, it falls under the category of it's funny because it's true. That joke that Colbert just made.
Amen to that.
Very good stuff.
Okay, one other thing I want to throw in, I don't get why, especially people like them who cover election after election, president after president, this myth of that the president, and most people believe this, that the president, after he's won re-election, he doesn't have to worry anymore, there's no more elections. No, there's still an election. There's an election that the next Democrat to fill your seat is going to have. The idea that the president doesn't care about that or doesn't worry about what he does in his final 4 years will affect that,
yeah, you know,
I think it's just such a myth that they love to trot out. Like, oh yeah, he's going to go wild now. And the reason that it's damaging is that then your expectations for earlier in his first term perhaps are lower because, oh, if we just get him a second time, then he's going to go loose. No, they don't go loose. They don't cut wild. They still worry about future elections. They still worry about their legacy.
I don't hate John King at all, but that kind of conversation is, you know, you wonder why Americans don't like politics and why they don't watch news. Like, that conversation was foolish, simple-minded, inarticulate, uninteresting, and incredibly jaded. And did I say ignorant?
You left. I think you left something out.
And it was mostly, again, wildly inauthentic. It's just this phony conversation. It doesn't frame anything, and they'll be like, "Oh, come on, we were just talking about a joke." But then you tried to have an intelligent conversation about the joke. But again, it's just a bunch of fake. It's funny because it's true.
I was more focused on the woman in red in the middle, who's like, you know, sometimes Obama laughs and sometimes he just nods his head, and I'm like,
yeah,
whoa.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's research
because I think the word he left out was also there was a bit of bootlicking
Yeah,
to the
totally.
whole thing as well.
Yeah.
But that's the inauthentic part. It doesn't. There's nothing human about it. The fact is, every candidate in a competitive race ran away from the president.
Yeah.
The big decision in Iowa, trying to beat Joni or Jody Ernst. Joni Ernst
Yeah.
in Iowa was
Who's a crazy person.
Who's a crazy person? Which
always
is,
remind people of
we'll
that.
bring in Michelle.
Yeah.
We'll bring in the first lady because she's popular, because we're not going to bring in the president. I mean, I had a lot of criticisms with the president, but part of the reason why it's easy to criticize the president is because Democrats are afraid of him. They're afraid of what should be a signature accomplishment. And, if you believe Chuck Schumer, then they mangled it from a political point of view. But story after story, including today, read Talking Points memo, read Slate today. There are both stories, there are big stories today about, hey, here are two great things that Obamacare has done. Here are now more than 10 million people who would have health insurance who wouldn't have health insurance. And look what else is happening. The price controls are actually working. The cost of health care is not rising at nearly the same rate. It is a smaller, this is where I get dumb, it is a smaller part of the GNP.
The rate of change is itself becoming
Right. It
less
is much more manageable than it's been in like the last 15 or 20 years. Should there be a public option? Would that have made a gigantic difference? Of course, but the things they did put in there it could be a lot better. But there are things in there that are actually working, and those are true, undisputed facts. And we have an entire political party that should be celebrating that and won't do it, and instead got their ass kicked. And you just know that the lesson they got from it is more likely the Chuck Schumer lesson than a lesson of, hey man, Jimmy Dore was here today. He'll be in a couple of shows later in the week, and he told me, and I haven't looked this up yet, but there's a Democrat in Mississippi whose idea to change the course of Democrat, to change the course of Democratic electoral disasters in the South is to, let's be Democrats. Let's be progressives. Let's see what happens. Let's set an agenda where people really respond to. Let's talk about income inequality. Let's talk about shoring up and strengthening Social Security and Medicare, and not the Paul Ryan shoring it up. Let's talk about actually shoring it up, and let's see what happens. Because and essentially now I'm going to put words in the guy's mouth, but like I don't give a shit how much I lose by or whether I lose. But let's lose fighting for something that we believe in. But of course, you have to actually believe in it first.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and look, on election night, not the last weekend's runoff election, but the actual election night. The Democrats they not only lost, they did worse than the polls thought they were going to. They did horribly, and they did horribly not embracing progressivism. So to think that their strategy was right, you have to believe that if they had actually sort of stood for some liberal principles, it would have been 70-30 across the board or something like that, which I find hard to believe in many cases.
You know, when people say, at least he died doing what he loves, die doing what you love. Now, the fear is, and I think Wes will be right, is that what they love is kowtowing to Wall Street.
Yeah.